it though.
So, it turns out you guys really liked part 1 of this little mini-series I decided to just slap together one day. And the girlfriend and I would just like to say thank you for the support. Watching that video blow up as quickly as it did in 48 hours was insane. So as mentioned at the end of the first episode, we did a little bit of off-screen grinding just to help her get the hang of things without the pressure of being on camera and having her every move scrutinised. When she was ready to go again, we headed over to Limgrave Tunnels, where I thought it'd be a bit more of an interesting dynamic for her to experience a whole new different kind of enemies with a whole slew of different attacks. So far, she's only really experienced soldiers with your swords, shields and spears, so I thought maybe having something with a bit of range to it would be good. The miners in the tunnels throw rocks, have melee attacks, and can shoot fire out of their lanterns, so I thought this would be a good opportunity for girlfriend to learn to dodge roll and maybe even learn to block with a shield. This did not happen. Turns out, my girlfriend is extremely stubborn and was sticking quite well to her walk up to it and smash it till it dies strategy. And as much as I was trying to drill it into her head that at some point she is going to have to learn basic mechanics of the game, she was doing quite well, just running up into groups of enemies or individual enemies, backstabbing them for massive damage, and then finish them off with a few sword swings. Because as you may have noticed by the footage, she is now using a greatsword. And unbeknownst to her, this is actually a pretty good option when you go down into the tunnels, as the miners actually have resistance to slashing and piercing. The first 15 minutes of our second session on the game was spent going through these tunnels and systematically clearing out the enemies, much like what happened at the Gatefront ruins. And quite proud of herself, realised she'd reached the end and then was sorely disappointed that what was assumed to be the only forward path led to a dead end and a few resources that she wasn't able to use just yet. It was on the way back to the elevator where I pointed out that there might be a secret ledge for her to go up, in which she told me she actually spotted it but wasn't aware of how to get to it. So we sent her up the elevator and she jumped off and was now confronted with miners who are now shooting fire. And this is where she discovered the stakes of Marika. Unlike previous Soulsborne games where you die and you are sent back to the last bonfire you rested at, Stakes of Marika are essentially checkpoints outside some of the more major confrontations with enemies, boss rooms, some field bosses, and in some occasions, like right here, in tunnels where there's a whole new area to explore. And upon dying once again to the miners and resetting her way through, we went through 3 or 4 runs of this area so she can get a better grasp on the enemy attack patterns when there wasn't 4 or 5 of them, only 2 or 3 at a time. And almost 20 minutes later, we finally reached the end of the tunnels. We reached the boss room. Understandably, she was quite nervous as she hasn't really taken on a boss so far. She's attempted to fight enemies with a bigger health bar, but this will be her real first test against a boss enemy. The fight starts and she immediately beelines towards the troll to get under his feet and starts to smack him about. Realising that this is a great tactic to kick off with, she tries to stick to it as much as possible before her issues with lock-on and camera management kind of rear their heads a bit more once again. And, unsurprisingly, the troll gets the best of her a few minutes into the fight.
There you go, that was a good one. That one.
How am I meant to be under his feet?
That's why you got to learn to dodge roll.
I can't do that with the camera.
Locking on won't help because it will lock onto his chest, not his legs, so...
Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god.
It was a good first attempt.
No, horrible, I don't know what I'm looking at.
After a bit of a pep talk and telling her she can do it and explaining about staggering, girlfriend got back in there and managed to smack the troll enough to actually stun him. And to my amazement, she managed to beat the troll at the end of Limgrave Tunnels on her second attempt.
No, 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 no.
Oh, fucking hell. Jesus Christ, that wasn't worth it. A raw medallion.
It's fine.
albeit she stuck to her run face first into a brick wall strategy and still spam healed quite a bit. I was pleasantly shocked to see that she was capable of doing such things. With that, we head back out into the open world where we start to learn a little bit more of other game mechanics, and this is where I introduce her to riding Torrent. After getting to grips with his basic controls, Girlfriend started to run around and just get a feel for the combat, discovering that groups of enemies and some larger enemies that are harder to deal with on foot basically become a joke once you are on horseback. After defeating one of the nomadic horse riders on the bridge, she starts to travel eastward a little bit, trying to head down to the Weeping Peninsula, where she comes across one of the convoys led by 2 trolls pulling a coffin wagon. Stopping to observe their movements for a little bit, she decides it's best, at least at this stage, even on horseback, going around is probably the best idea. Only to come across another nomadic horse rider, get completely blindsided, and die. The trip back to that point and going further beyond, going to the bridge that leads into the Weeping Peninsula, was actually kind of uneventful. She observed some more enemy movement and then just took in the environment as she wandered down. Crossing the bridge to the Weeping Peninsula went a lot more smoothly than I originally thought, fully expecting her to get nailed by one of the crossbow bolts. She smoothly just went around the side and then jumped over the defences at the end. She had a bit of a nose around and then blasted past a troll, some dogs and some carrion enemies before resting up at a site of grace and calling it quits for the night. And this originally was going to be the extent of the video. I probably would have dragged it out a little bit more, gone into some details you don't care for, but when I woke up this morning, I discovered that my girlfriend was just playing Elden Ring, and it was bizarre. Not that this is the first time she's done this. There's been plenty of times where I've come home from work or woke up and find her playing a game that she's just started up and just finds herself enjoying. But surprisingly, I never expected that to happen with Elden Ring. And this is where I essentially decided to take the ultimate back seat and just let her play. She took the initiative to record her footage herself, so everything you're going to be seeing on screen is without me in the room. Now, she didn't have a set goal. She just wanted to wander around, experience different enemy encounters, try and get her rune level up a little bit. She did discover the Golem Archer outside Castle Morn though, so that was quite funny to hear that reaction. But eventually, we did backtrack a little bit, and I sent her towards the Colosseum outside Stormville Castle, hoping that the NPC invader there would be the best way to train her in dodge rolling and blocking, considering that this is a moveset she wouldn't have come across yet. And while she was practicing dodge rolling and trying to learn timings and got it down sometimes, essentially what this led to is her rolling away about 3 or 4 times in any given direction, spamming heal, and then running face first into the invader and just returning to her usual tactics. After about 4 attempts at taking on the invader, she finally managed to best him in combat. While this should have been a joyous moment, it completely defeated the purpose of me sending her that way. But she does still make the fair point that it's her preferred playstyle, no one's got the right to tell her how to play. There's also the very real chance that my girlfriend's going to hear me recording this, as she's only one room over and the soundproofing in my flat is piss poor, so there's a good chance she's gonna spit or poison my food. One thing I do want to comment on though is her grasp of the controls are getting better. She still gets a little bit lost on the keyboard when it comes to switching out your quick select items and using them, but her control over the camera has gotten a lot better, her locking on has gotten a lot better, and she will happily take any opportunity she gets to backstab an enemy. The R1 spam is still there and still excessive, but this is a habit we will break eventually. And looking over the footage, my absolute favourite moment so far is she was approaching some jellyfish outside Castle Morn on the Weeping Peninsula, and you can see she's not hiding, but she is now slowly taking in the situation, looking at the environment, gauging the enemies and what they may or may not do. After like 2 minutes, she decides to move in and attack the first jellyfish, which she takes out relatively easy, as you might expect. And something that I didn't expect was she saw the enemy telegraph its poison spray attack, and she managed to maneuver out the way of it. But what made it so funny is she ran for the hills. She put a huge amount of distance between her and one of the aggro jellyfish, and then dodge rolled an idle animation. She then yoinked the loot, went on to fight some bats, actually read some lore, She then made her way back to Stormville Castle, up the winding path and past the ballista users and the soldiers there. And at this point she has become quite proficient with dealing with hollow soldiers, so this was nothing for her. We end off outside the Margit arena, as I wrongly was under the impression that that was the site of grace that would get you into the Round Table Hold, before realising you have to progress past Margit. But she's not quite ready for him yet. In fact, in the nicest way possible, she's nowhere near ready for Margit yet. True enough that she took out the troll at Limgrave Tunnel, she even went back and took out the beast man at the bottom of the wolf cave. Those are nothing compared to the moveset and power that Margit is going to bring that has made so many Elden Ring players rage quit early on in the game. But even though she's only played the game 4 times so far, you can see that there is an actual progression of her skill set, and that's something that's going to slowly build up over time. I can't say for certain how many episodes this series is going to be, but I think regardless, this is going to be a very interesting trip to see. Not only if she beats Margit, but then if there's any drive there to go past and see how much of the game she's willing to take on. And just before we round this video off, I just want to say thank you once again for the support of the last video. I'm glad everyone enjoyed watching my girlfriend's first ever blind playthrough through Elden Ring, and really her first ever experience in something like an open world RPG that's melee focused. Maybe I'll introduce her to sorceries and whatnot, maybe I'll let her know about White Mask and Rivers of Blood, but that's a story for much later on down the road. And I'm also planning on trying to get these out weekly. I don't have a set date, it all just depends on my girlfriend's work schedule and free time to record and edit, so please bear with us on that. We will try to keep it consistent to at least 7 days between episodes, but I don't want to make guarantees on that. That's enough of this end of video ramble thingy. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.